JD Vance, his book is incredibly famous. He wrote Hillbilly Elegy, which a lot of kind of affluent liberals found to be very, very compelling. And quite quickly, a lot of criticism came towards the book, rightly so. And it makes sense.
They could make a Netflix movie.
Surprisingly, critics have tossed almost nothing but hatchets, creating what director Ron Howard told us is, quote, the biggest differential he's ever had between critical consensus and audience approval ratings. Think about that.
It's no secret that the film's getting pretty bad reviews from critics. It's getting panned.
Now, there are a lot of cliches and stereotypes in this movie. It's a familiar movie if you know American Dream stories.
The whole point of the story seems to be of a white male savior.
Regrettably involved Glenn Close and Amy Adams, who are two great actresses who embarrassed themselves in that film.
As far as the performances in the movie go, I actually found a lot of them kind of flat. And in some of the cases here, I do suspect that might stem mostly from the script not really working for me.
Yeah, this just becomes like a really sort of empty bootstraps narrative. Like, quit complaining, go get a job like I did and work hard in school and, join the military, and you too can, absolve yourself from the cycle of poverty in this part of the country. And it's like, I'm glad it worked out for you, JD Vance, but you're not really like laying out a roadmap for anybody else,
Our score, 1 out of 5.
The film they're talking about, and the subject of this video, is of course Hillbilly Elegy, based on a book by JD Vance, who made headlines in 2024 when this happened.
It is therefore my honor to nominate Ohio Senator JD Vance for the office of Vice President of the United States of America.
I'm not really up to speed with American politics, so when I heard that JD Vance was to be Donald Trump's potential vice president, it felt a bit like this. Who is vice president of the United States in 2024? JD Vance? JD Vance? The author? Then who's president? Donald Trump? I honestly had no idea who JD Vance was. To me, he was just some guy who wrote a book that they made into a movie, which I hadn't seen because I don't have a Netflix account.
This is one of those, sort of portraits of a time and a place. It's the drama is very specific to JD's family, but I think many of the things that they went through are relatable. The world is specific to a region that isn't seen that much, and I felt that was interesting. But the problems are not unique to that region.
I purchased a copy of the book and read it pretty quickly. It's the true story of JD Vance growing up poor in Kentucky, being raised by his drug-addicted mother and his tough-as-old-boots grandmother, or Meemaw. Despite the odds, he manages to exceed the expectations of those who come from his background and ends up attending Yale Law School. It's a simple, you work hard and you keep your head down, you can be anything you want kind of story. And it worked for him.
I saw was an interesting and dynamic story about a young boy and his strong and fierce Meemaw, who you will love and fear if you read this book. I wanted to give JD a high five so many times, so impressed by him and his accomplishments, whether it was his service in the Marines or graduating from Yale Law School.
Vance writes as a man who knows that he is always greater than the sum of his parts, and he affords the same dignity to others in his story. Deep and profound love doesn't keep him from naming the crisis or examining its causes within his own family. Horrible title aside, it's well written and provocative.
This perhaps goes some way towards explaining the current middle-class unhappiness with the political establishment and the rise of Trump.
The book was received rather well, with a lot of people saying that this is a look at the middle American Trump voting family they otherwise would never have seen, which is what good storytelling, in all its forms, is designed to do, which is to say to make you empathise with that which you are not, which seems to be a message which is forgotten amongst the world's current trend to demand representation in everything.
The struggles of a childhood are not necessarily solved because you got into a good school or, got a job. You still have to confront these things and work through them and understand them. And so that part of the story was even, as JD explained it to me, was even more dangerous, where a period of time where he was going through real depression and he had so much to lose. and yet had to confront his past and his family one more time and grow beyond, and yet he never rejected them.
So a film adaptation was made with Ron Howard in the director's seat. Now, I rather like Ron Howard. He's made several films I really enjoy. Backdraft, Beautiful Mind and Apollo 13 are 3 films I could watch over and over again. He's also made Angels and Demons and Far and Away, and the less said about them, the better.
During the election year of 2016, JD Vance's insights into Appalachia turned him into what the Washington Post called the Trump Whisperer, or the Rust Belt Anger Translator. And while this year is defined not by a reckoning with rural decline, but racial injustice, Adam sees the very same sparks of conversation.
I've heard from people unsolicited that spoke to either the addiction or the trauma. It's one of the first movies where a crew member has come up to me and talked about their experience, so it definitely gets people feeling.
That's a good sign. What do you hope the typical viewer takes away from the movie?
I hope, that they can take away empathy for people that they might not understand and might not agree with at times. But I also hope that some people feel seen.
The film only had a short theatrical run before being released to Netflix.
There has been, the reviews have started to break, and there have been some very, very negative reviews. There's been a lot of debate about the politics of the piece. There's a lot of debate about the politics of the novel, which, I haven't read, has been cited as a sort of touchstone in understanding how Trump won the inverted commas white working class vote in 2016. And Vance, who I think is Republican, I'm not sure, but I think he is, was a sort of, was talked about a lot at the time. To be honest with you, the politics were never an issue. I've read some things about people calling it poverty porn and that sort of stuff. The politics weren't an issue for me. The issue for me was, I think it's incredibly dramatically inert.
The performance is also just, I have to go back to this. They're so over the top. Amy Adams can really do everything. She's terrible here. She's just shrieky, and like the chain smoking is meant to be the shorthand for how fucked up she is, and like screaming in the middle of the street, and just is all so obvious and so over the top, and there's such histrionics on display here.
They're screaming at each other all the time. It's such a stereotype. There's foul language used all the time. It's such a stereotype. Everybody's smoking, There's no money for pills, but they have money for cigarettes, that kind of thing. And I just, the veneer and the gloss that is put on this is so much of someone who's never experienced it from the inside.
At the time of recording, Hillbilly Elegy has a 25% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes and an 81% audience score. This sort of chasm between audience review and professional is becoming a regular thing, but it doesn't reflect the movie I saw. Could there be another reason this film is so downvoted?
Are you a racist? Do you hate Mexicans? The media calls us racist for wanting to build Trump's wall. They censor us, but it doesn't change the truth. Joe Biden's open border is killing Ohioans, with more illegal drugs and more Democrat voters pouring into this country. This issue is personal. I nearly lost my mother to the poison coming across our border. No child should grow up an orphan. I'm JD Vance, and I approve this message because whatever they call us, we will put America first.
JD Vance is one of those guys. And although his book flew under the radar of the other political side, it seems the Netflix movie would not achieve the same stealth maneuver. But so many of the reviews seem to be attacking the politics of JD Vance, who is the staunchest of staunch conservatives, and not the movie itself.
Now, there is no question whatsoever that if this film had not been seen as a sort of referendum on Trump voters, it would have gotten sterling critical reaction. No question. Right? If this had been a play on how Trump had ignored rural voters, then it would have done great. Right? If all these people at the end had voted for Joe Biden, all of the critics would have been like, amazing, amazing stuff. But because the book and then eventually the movie were deemed to be a sort of examination of the Trump voter, you cannot portray Trump voters sympathetically. And so there's this vast gap between the critical reaction to the film and the audience reaction.
I personally wouldn't say the book was massively political. JD Vance does make a few comments about his family spending money on the wrong things like big TVs, cigarettes and drugs. And the moral does seem to be that only you can make you the person you want to be. But seeing this as the tale of a man who achieved that, I saw it as an I did it my way moment.
And did it my way.
movie's not political at all. Of course it isn't. I doubt an overtly right-wing movie could attract the talents of a supporter of the Democrat Party such as Ron Howard. But still, it's been tarred with the brush of wrong politics, which reminds me of Sound of Freedom.
Better a millstone be hung around your neck, and you be cast into the sea.
Had the makers of this movie made exactly the same film as they did, word for word, shot for shot, but cast Denzel Washington in the lead, then people would have been talking about how powerful it was. Instead, they cast conspiracy theory-loving Christian, Jim Caviezel.
The adrenochroming of children, look, where we're at right now, hopefully, we need your prayers.
He may have played the role of Jesus Christ in Mel Gibson's 2004 movie The Passion of the Christ, but now it seems actor Jim Caviezel is preaching a different kind of gospel, echoing the gospel of QAnon while speaking to a right-wing convention over the weekend.
You said adrenochrome.
Essentially, you have adrenaline in your body. I'll just simplify it. And when you are scared, you produce adrenaline. If a child knows he's going to die, his body will secrete this adrenaline.
I think I have this right when I say the star thinks that there are farms set up around the world to milk adrenaline from scared children. Well, if that exists, then it would be horrible. But before I start believing it exists, I would need any sort of evidence, as to date I have seen none. But either way, that's by the by, as such things do not feature in the film Sound of Freedom, so therefore shouldn't be included in the review. What the star thinks in his own time means very little to me. Tom Hanks could be a flat earther, Paul Giamatti could believe in Cthulhu, John Travolta could believe that Xenu was captured and imprisoned on Earth 75 million years ago after bringing billions of his people to the planet, placing them around in volcanoes and killing them using hydrogen bombs. Oh, wait a second. This is the 1961 romantic comedy Breakfast at Tiffany's, and if you were to suggest that Mickey Rooney's portrayal of Mr. Yunioshi is racist, then that is a point which could be argued. But if you were to say that Holly Golightly was homophobic, you would not, even though the character is expressly homophobic in the original Truman Capote book.
This is not good at all. It's a really sort of surface study of the lives of these characters. It's certainly not interested in any of the larger systems that put them where they are, or that have affected the economy or their opportunities or their educational choices or any of that stuff. It's mainly a movie about how great JD Vance is for getting out of there, and how he is, he's managed to be better than his surroundings and do better than might have been expected of him. But at the same time, he's also better than those snobby lawyers who call his family rednecks and kind of, look at him askance when he tells them he's from Ohio. Yeah, this movie's a crock.
In doing research for this video, I found the film had no hope of being a huge hit, as the negative reviews were coming in before the film was released. Netflix announced that they were making a film based on the work of JD Vance, and that was enough for people to know it was shit. To be fair, I was one of those people. I didn't know who JD Vance was beyond being an author, so it wasn't because of him. I hate Netflix. I hate how bloated and overlong their films are. I hate how they look because of streaming. I hate how their scripts are always 2 drafts away from being filmable. Netflix for some reason think they're a home of top quality content, but they've got no more passion for the art film than Asylum Films does. But I put that aside, and I watched the film. It's kind of bloated. It's a bit overlong, the script is unfocused. Visually, the colourful 1997 scenes look better than the 2011 footage, which is darker, and streaming doesn't like the shadows. But it's saved by some stellar performances. Amy Adams is often screechy and histrionic, and you can call that a stereotype if you like, but it's also a common affectation of addicts, and those with borderline personality disorder, which the character also shows signs of. Glenn Close is the standout as the grandmother, Mima, who is no angel herself, having set her own husband alight on one occasion, but she knows potential when she sees it, and sacrifices what little she has to give the boy, JD, the chance he needs to get out. Growing up in the UK as I did, my life is a million miles away from that which is lived in the film, and issues like having to choose between pills or food is not something that happens in England because of the NHS. But I found a great deal of familiarity in this film. They share a family name with my mother's side of the family, and although I have no reason to think my grandmother threatened to shoot someone in earnest, she does share a lot of characteristics with Meemaw. They certainly smoked about the same. I was always hoping that JD would get out and make something more of himself, because if he had not, then this would have been a very depressing 2 hours. But because he did, the journey was worthwhile.
I would say that both the book and the movie are like hard recommends from me. I really enjoyed both. I listened to the book on audio and it's read by him and it was just wonderful. And then I thought that the movie itself, just as a standalone movie, not knowing anything about the book, was really, really good. And so I do recommend both of them.
But I actually quite enjoyed the movie because, you know, I just at face value, like it was a compelling enough story about a family. I don't go into the movie with all these like expectations about like if it doesn't discuss like the context of like the poverty of their community, then I'm just like marking an X off my sheet. Like I just want to see something that has compelling characters. It's a well-acted drama.
How much you're gonna like this movie depends, I think, on how much you believe in this thing, whatever it is, called the American dream. I tend to believe in it because I don't think there are other solutions. I don't see them. If you don't believe you can work hard and make something out of your life and improve your own life and improve the lives of those around you through hard work and diligence and service and, you know, trying to go after what you love, well, what's the alternative?
I'm glad people, I thought I really enjoyed the movie. I'd read the book and then looked at the movie, and Ron Howard has put together such a great cast. You know, I realize the reviews may not be so great, but I love all their attitudes about it.
Yeah.
You know, I thought Ron Howard said it very well.
Yeah, well, it's very peculiar that some of these publications that so hailed the book are now coming after the movie with criticism. And it's sort of a sad thing that happens in this country where it's like if we're focusing on this group and its problems, we can't also acknowledge that this other group also has problems.
Yeah.
And like, it's not a contest of suffering. Both problems matter.
I have set up a Ko-Fi account, which means if you enjoyed this video, you can send me the money for a coffee, which I won't drink as I don't like coffee, but I will use that money to make more stuff like this. And if you like this, why not watch my other videos? Here's one I think you might enjoy. I'm Scott Kingsnorth, and I'm making a movie.